Cleveland Browns get a big-time victory, first preseason game against the Jacksonville Jaguars, 24-13. We got a special guest in the house, John Kosko, Pro Football Focus. We break down the good, the bad, the ugly. We also get to offense, defense, and special teams. We'll do it all coming up next on the next episode of the Locked On Browns podcast.
You are Locked On Browns, your daily Cleveland Browns podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome back, my friends, to the show that never ends, your daily delivery of all things Dog Pound, LGB on the LOB, the Locked On Browns podcast, brought to you by the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, your host, Jeff Lloyd, at Jeff_LJ_Lloyd, your host, Mr. Garrett Bush, at GBush91, part of the Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show, 11 to 1, Monday through Friday, of course, on YouTube, The Barbershop, 92.3 The Fan, Saturday morning, certainly other appearances, as always appreciate everybody who makes Locked On Browns their first listen, day in, day out, whether it is on your favorite podcast platform, of course, now on YouTube, closing in on 2,600 subscribers. Big weekend, obviously. And one of the staples of the show always has been, will be pregame show and postgame show coverage. And, first weekend, we got to go through this with Garrett. Obviously, reviews, the listens, the downloads were outstanding. Could not be more appreciative. Today's episode is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline has you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. BetOnline, where the game starts. As Garrett has mentioned, one of the other big parts of this show has always been, wrapping it up the weekend post games with John Kosko here. Been probably doing this about 4 or 5 seasons now. John relocated, looks great. First of all, looks fantastic. Obviously, always got to do what you got to do to keep the family happy. But for the Browns. And what we talked about when we closed this out, when Garrett and I finished up Friday night, was the Browns needed a feel-good moment. Look, this team has been beat around for 6 months. Whether you think that's rightfully so or not rightfully so, this team, has been, gone through a lot for 6 months now. This team needed a feel-good moment. What they also needed is for the media to understand Deshaun Watson notwithstanding, this is a good football roster. There are a lot of good football players on this team. And we got to see, that in action Friday night. So John Kosko from PFF. John, first things first. This is a team that is absolutely loaded at the running back position, and most likely is going to have to lean on the running back position, maybe for a while, maybe the entire season. We know what Nick Chubb's capable of. We know what Kareem Hunt's capable of. We kind of have an idea who Dearness Johnson is. When they drafted Jerome Ford, it was almost like, well, what's the point? What are you going to do with the kid? 14 touches, over 100 total yards, 2 touchdowns. And I think, John, the most impressive thing about Jerome Ford was at Cincinnati, they didn't need to throw him the ball. It wasn't, so nobody knew whether or not there was some receiving aspect to this young man's game. But we know what the Browns like to do. They like to get the running backs involved in the passing game. But you talk about a debut for a guy who's probably considered the 4th string running back. It's a nice way to open things up.
Yeah, you're talking about a debut that really couldn't have gone any better. And with one blip, which being the fumble on which was an excellent catch, made 2 guys miss, and then had the ball stripped. But I mean, you're talking that first run, that big run that he had. Really good vision is what he shows, and he can break tackles when he has the good vision. And he didn't show the chops of pretty much the receiving that he showed in this game, but he can make some good catches. Obviously, had the touchdown, over 11 yards per catch. You couldn't have gone better for him, really. And fumbles happen, but I think what you see from him and what you got from the Browns running back room is that they really need Kareem Hunt back there. He's not guaranteed any money this year. So to me, it's like a big question of, you draft that guy, you've got Dearness Johnson, who's on the cheap. You have the highly paid guy in Nick Chubb. You save that money by being able to trade him, because there are running back needy teams out there, and the Browns are definitely not one of them.
Yeah, that's a very big point, John. You got a guy like Kareem Hunt, who they looked to lean on a little bit this year, and I think he kind of saw the writing on the wall. He's seen this guy Jerome Ford in practice every week. He's like, come on now, this guy's good. Dearness Johnson is good. If it was you, Would you make the move? We've heard about Roquan Smith. I don't know if that's a thing that can happen. But what do you think his value in the market is, being a running back? Obviously, he still has some tread on the tires, not a full-time back. What are your thoughts on what the Browns could potentially get for him on the open market?
Yeah, the problem is that he's a running back, and I think guys that are 27 years old at the running back position don't go for very much. And and especially with his, he's long past his past of kicking a woman, but like that's still a thing. That's still a thing that will deter teams that say nope, he's just not going to be on our team. So there will be some teams that could trade for him, but you're talking about a mid-round pick, like a day or maybe an early day 3 pick at best, and probably you're looking at a swapping of picks type thing for him. So he's a quality back, but the thing is, the position is just not a highly valuable position, especially for a guy who's already 27 years old, as old as he is. No, even though he doesn't have that much, no many touches throughout his career, it is what it is for that.
The interesting thing there, and you never know, because with the running back position, and I always use this one as an example. Last year, the Baltimore Ravens lost their top 2 running backs in about 19 hours. So there could be teams that say, yeah, you know what, Kareem Hunt is not even a thought process in our building. But then all of a sudden, maybe a decision is essentially made for you in camp. So we'll see how that plays out. Stump Mitchell, I mean, can you talk about a guy who's got the easiest job in the world right now? Hey, guys, just, you're fine. Never mind. We're good. But, John, the wide receiver position, Donovan Peoples-Jones, obviously the blocking, the Browns value it. I don't think anybody's going to get up in arms over, some blocking in week 1 of preseason, even if it did not look good. Anthony Schwartz, this team needs him to make some plays. Obviously a tough night for Anthony Schwartz, but with somebody having a tough night, some guys get an opportunity they might not get. And, talking about, Dalen Baldwin, this has kind of been a thing here. And I know people at Browns camp are telling me nobody's talking about him, but literally every time the Browns throw him the ball, the kid catches it. And it don't matter what it looks like. That's the key to it all at that position.
Yeah, he caught every ball that was thrown his way, which is obviously something that Anthony Schwartz did not do. His grade for the game was, phenomenal grade, 89.7.
For a late arrival too, because he wasn't here when camp first started.
Yeah, all 3 of his catches went for first downs. All 3 of them were contested catches. So he's a guy that was just out there making plays. He's 6'2", 218. He's a big-bodied guy. Undrafted rookie. So he, who knows? It's one game. I'm never the type to overreact to one preseason game. Even Anthony Schwartz drops, I'm not going to overreact to those. His second drop where he tried to turn upfield before securing the ball, he was trying to make a play, and I get it. The first one was probably inexcusable, but last year Jamar Chase dropped 5 balls on like 6 targets or something like that, and I think he turned out all right. But Anthony Schwartz, obviously not the guy that Jamar Chase is, but still, like, it's preseason, and I think Dalen Baldwin, he showed well in the game. We need to see more, and hopefully he can build on that.
Deshaun Watson, he looked a little rusty out there. Looked kind of, taking the snap under the center, you fumbled a snap, got a tackle for loss. I think he airmailed a pass to Anthony Schwartz on the first series as well. Your thoughts, or could you even take anything from that when you saw Deshaun Watson?
First throw it was nervous, right? That was the very first throw rollout, and he overthrew Anthony Schwartz. I think Schwartz was maybe a little bit shallow on his over route, but he still overthrew it by a mile. And I think that was just nerves of excited nerves. And then he kind of calmed down, made a good play on the scramble, the throw to Anthony Schwartz who dropped it. That was a good play. And then his last throw, he threw it kind of at the feet of Dimitri Felton with a defender right there in a third and long situation. To me, I think he was fine. I think you want to get out there and get that rust off your shoulders, at least get back onto the field and get the nerves calmed down, because it did seem like the whole team felt that nervous energy, and they all struggled in that first quarter. So once he kind of settled in, the team also settled in, and they obviously pulled out a dub. But I think for him, it was just good to be out there and get. It's been over almost 2 years now since he's played a game, so it's hard to do that and look good right off the bat.
And it's 2 years, but also you factor in, everything off the field that's going on. Now the fact that I'm playing with a brand new team, brand new system, brand new players, guys that I'm not accustomed to. And this is one thing we talked about with Deshaun Watson is, look, it's can you put all of that off the table when you go out and play? I mean, there's no way if you're Deshaun Watson, this cannot be on your mind every stinking waking second of every single day. And most likely, rightfully so, probably. But can you can you park that? And can you get back on the field and just go about playing football the way you did? We'll see the way it works. But obviously for the Browns, when he does and, eventually get back on the field, that is a huge thing for them that they are going to obviously have to, factor in as far as Deshaun Watson is. Can he block it all out and just go out there and perform like this team needs him to perform? We're going to get to more here. John Kosko joining Garrett Bush and Jeff Lloyd. Go a little PFF review here from the Browns' victory Friday night in Jacksonville. Look, over the last 2 years, when you've been locked in your house, worried about money and so many other things, look, therapy, talking to somebody, getting your problems out there. You don't have all the answers. You're not supposed to have all the answers, but BetterHelp can help you get to the right answers. Life is full of twists and turns, and it's important to show up for yourself through it all. BetterHelp Online Therapy will assess your needs and can match you with your own licensed professional therapist in less than 48 hours. You need to get to the root of some of the problems in your life. Through therapy, you can do this and become a better you. It's not a crisis line. It's not self-help. It's professional therapy done securely online, available to people worldwide. It's more affordable than traditional offline therapy, and financial aid is available. Visit their website and read their testimonials that are posted daily. Several great reviews about the reaction, the therapy that people have gotten from BetterHelp. So if you need to, you probably should check this out. And they have a special offer for all of our listeners. Get 10% off your first month at betterhelp.com/lockedon, all caps, no space. That is 10% off your first month of online therapy at betterhelp.com/lockedon.
Welcome back to the Locked On Podcast. G. Bush in the building, Jeff Lloyd in the building. We also have a special guest recapping the Browns' preseason victory over the Jacksonville Jaguars, John Kosko of Pro Football Focus. As Jeff said earlier, make sure you continue to hit that like button and subscribe button. Make sure you make Locked On Browns your number one and your first listen to of the day, and continue to support us by downloading our podcast wherever you get your platforms. And I'll also make sure you go check out John Kosko. Make sure you're following him on Twitter as well. We talked a little bit about the offense, fellas. Let's get deep into the defense here. There's a lot of names, and one of the names that jump off the page for me is as a defensive lineman. I thought Isaiah Thomas had a decent game. Production-wise, was in the backfield, couple of sacks, tackle for loss. I just think he's one of those sneaky. His athleticism doesn't really just jump out at you like, oh my goodness, he's so fast and strong. But he uses his hands well, body position well, where he needs to be, and he was able to make some plays. Also, DeAnthony Bell, I thought played really well. I thought we would see more Richard LeCount, but I can see why they're playing a young man, DeAnthony Bell, a little bit as well. Your thoughts on those two guys, John?
Yeah, Isaiah Thomas had a couple of sacks, which is obviously always good to do in your first preseason game. Had an additional pressure on top of that. So he did have a missed tackle in a game, which, it happens, but you can't argue he had a really productive game there. And then DeAnthony Bell had, from the safety position, had a stop, had a forced fumble, did give up just only one catch for 9 yards. So he had another productive game there too, on 28 snaps. So those guys showed up pretty well. I think, how much are they going to contribute this year? Probably not much. Maybe Isaiah Thomas a bit more than obviously DeAnthony Bell, but obviously really two productive games from the two rookies there. And again, I never always overreact. One of the sacks was a cleanup type sack for Isaiah Thomas, but you like to see the hustle to get after it, and you saw the energy and the motor that he has. So promising debut again for another rookie.
For a team that's gonna not hopefully need a lot of depth, but you need to know your depth is going to be ready to go, God forbid, when you have to call their name. One of the biggest conversations about the Browns in this training camp, John, has been interior defensive line play. Jordan Elliott with a nice pass rep early. Perion Winfrey probably, still figuring it all out as, things are coming a million miles an hour. And, basically every practice you're going against Joe Bitonio and Wyatt Teller. So, I mean, that's enough to humiliate you. But then you have Tommy Togiai, 4 tackles. I know there was one, a double team, literally absorbed the blockers. And we've talked about this linebacking unit. These guys can fly. What is the key when you have linebackers like this is you absolutely have to keep them clean if you want them to perform like you expect them to perform. So a little bit here about the interior defensive line play, because, I don't think anybody really has any idea the way it's going to shape out. I think maybe there's some hopes and thoughts about the way it will shape out. And then he even got a wild card there at the, with Odom coming in, the USFL Defensive Player of the Year. And here's a guy, hey, maybe there wasn't an opportunity, but you go in, you make some plays, and everybody else, it's maybe kind of quiet. You never really know how it's going to shake out.
Yeah. So like Perion Winfrey, from a grade perspective, had a struggle in the game. Just had 1 assisted tackle. And as from a run defense standpoint, had a 38.2. He's a guy that is much more of a penetrator type to get after like the quarterback rather than being a run stopping guy. Togiai, on the other hand, is just supposed to be kind of more of a run stopper, kind of, and with some bull rush chops to be able to affect the passer. He had 4 tackles, which was obviously good. 2 of them being stops. Grade wise, it didn't really show up on the grade sheet from the 53. So he was getting, when he wasn't making plays, he was kind of getting pushed around a bit. So Chris Odom, though, on the other hand, like you mentioned him, he is a guy on the edge that. From a pass rushing standpoint, had 3 hurries and a sack. He really showed well. I thought was, surprisingly, effective in the game. A lot of this is, first preseason game, right? So I always say, I just continue to say this. Alex Wright, I think, showed well in a run defensive standpoint, but really kind of struggled other than getting 1 hit in a quarterback to get after the passer. And Taven Bryan, I think, I didn't know how they were going to specifically use him, but they're definitely using him on the inside to try to get after the passer and stuff. And he didn't do anything to get after him in that game. But I think they got to figure things out on the interior defensive line, and all those guys will be made to look worse when Myles Garrett and Jadeveon Clowney aren't there to help out to attract the offensive linemen so they can get singled up. So. In these preseason games, you don't get the benefit of 2 studs on the edge to alleviate some pressure off of from you.
And I guess in that position, do you need elite defensive tackles? From a standpoint of you want guys to be in there and clog it up, make a couple tackles here or there. If they can give you a push up the middle, great. Don't get blown off the football. But in today's game, I don't know if you need a Warren Sapp anymore. Your thoughts on that?
You definitely don't. Like my dad keeps talking to me. He's like, they need to go sign Ndamukong Suh, and it's like they're not going to. Like, it's not part of what they do as an organization. They're trying to go as cheap as they can on that interior defensive line where they can get at least average play. That's what they want. And it shows like the difference of going from an average defensive lineman to an elite one is there's not that too much difference unless your name is Aaron Donald, who's affecting it at a much higher rate. You're not going to try hitting for that upside. You obviously want to hit that upside, but Aaron Donald's like a top 2 defensive lineman of all time. Like he's an anomaly. You're not finding that. So the average offensive lineman and the average elite defensive lineman, the average elite defensive lineman, they don't move the needle like, say like a Myles Garrett on the edge does, or a cornerback that's going to make plays in coverage, or even linebackers that can get it and drop out in coverage. Those guys just need to be good enough to hold up against the run, and it's still a question that those guys can do that right now. So we'll see how that goes.
The only time you're truly concerned about it is if, it's short yardage situations. And guess what? You do that. All right, we'll just go with a 5-man front. You know what I'm saying? And just try to clog everything up or have somebody hopefully shoot a gap. Mention cornerback. We cannot not talk about it. Martin Emerson was the Browns' first selection in the 2022 NFL draft. I think everybody kind of said, really? Corner. Interesting. But you got to see him, and he played, a majority of the game. He started the game, gave up a completion early. Then all of a sudden, I think it was just like, all right, we're here. We are in this NFL world. First thing you saw from Martin Emerson is length, man. I mean, this guy literally has basketball length with his arms. You saw it come to fruition and knowing how to use it. Basically, two guys juggling for a ball. Martin Emerson, basically, this is mine. This is over with. I'm taking this. Then throws a stiff arm, jukes the daylights out of the cornerback, basically goes on the diagonal to have all, make sure no pursuit angles are there to catch him to go to the end zone. You are Joe Woods. You are a guy who has an epiphany for defensive backs. You have 5 corners, probably want to play all of them. I mean, you have zero issue at any given. Oh, your shoes untied? Don't worry about it, man. I got to go in. Let's go. Get a drink while you're there, man. She made sandwiches. Grab a sandwich. You got plenty of time. We'll get you back in when you're ready. You're 5 deep at the cornerback position. Legitimately at least 3 deep at the safety position. We'll see what works out with the count. John, the defensive back in you, what do you do in a scenario like this? Because you're almost going to feel bad some weeks because you're like, man, you probably deserve more playing time. But there's 10 of you. I've got to get everybody some reps. But it's kind of almost an embarrassment of riches right now for what's going on in that Browns cornerback room because we love Ward. We love Newsome. We know Denzel's a little bit smaller. We know Newsome's a little tiny. But then you bring in the bigger guys, the longer guys, AJ and Emerson. I mean, there's nothing. They have almost every possible flavor you could want in that secondary.
Yeah, and the good thing is that and Greedy has the length as well. So you want you can never have too many cornerbacks. Essentially, defensive backs is what you need in the NFL in today's
as
game.
Opposed to D tackles.
As opposed to D tackles, exactly. You have this because essentially Denzel Ward might get injured, Greg Newsome might get injured, somebody might get injured. Greedy Williams has had a history of injuries, right? So while all these guys have ooze with talent, it's not a bad thing. So it's a good thing to have. You should remember, I always go to this. The Eagles in their Super Bowl run when they won the Super Bowl, they had a secondary that played lights out, and they had depth there so that they could rotate those guys in and out. And you look at the New England Patriots for the past 2 decades, they've always had a plethora of defensive back talent. And because one guy gets hurt or somebody has to go in, they can just rotate them through. And that's what you want. That's the Browns are building a powerhouse in the secondary, and that makes life difficult, extremely difficult for opposing cornerbacks. When your cornerbacks can lock it down there. So, one thing that I've been doing for the past 3 years is I've been charting all what we call our all coverage data, which is we're breaking down every single individual route, how much separation guys are getting or not getting. If you have a perfectly covered play, the offense goes from basically to one of the worst offenses in the NFL if the quarterback can't find an open receiver. But if you have one guy mess up, they are instantly become one of the better offenses in the NFL. So the more you can lock down the opposing wide receivers, obviously the better your defense will be. So, and you do that with elite level talent at the cornerback position. Now you've got quickness and stuff like that with the Denzel and Newsome. You've got length and size with Emerson and Greedy. It's a great room to have.
Poor Joe Woods. And everybody who wanted to beat him like a dog because he didn't have the personnel that he wanted. Well, I think we're all going to see a big, big difference in that. We're going to get back here with John Kosko, Garrett Bush, Jeff Lloyd. Just going to maybe hit on a couple of the Browns' big storylines thus far through training camp. Continuing here, your latest Locked On Browns. Appreciate you all for being along for the ride. BetOnline.net is the fastest and easiest way to check in on all your betting needs. Find all your favorite sports and events at the #1 online source for odds, lines, and games. Find reviews and news of every league, including Major League Baseball. Congratulations, Guardians, first place. NFL, NBA, NHL, combat sports, esports, and even golf. BetOnline continues to be the top online resource for all your sports wagering information. From live in-game betting, scores, and podcasts, they have you covered. Head to BetOnline today or use your mobile device to learn more about the action happening today. BetOnline, where the game starts.
We back at it, Locked On Browns podcast. Make sure you definitely still keep on contact with us on Twitter, Locked On Browns on Twitter. Make sure you go ahead and follow us there. Listen, this is just the first of many. Hopefully we can get John back all the time. We can get him back on the post game recapping this thing as we go throughout the season. It's going to be a wild ride. Make sure you are in on that ride, and by subscribing and hitting that notification bell, you automatically get all the notifications of any time Locked On Browns comes on any of your platforms. So we've been talking about offense. We got to the defense. Now let's get to some of the big storylines of camp. I look at it like this. Now, Coach Kevin Stefanski, I was out of practice yesterday and went through the walkthrough, and basically it was a glorified walkthrough. And one of the things that you did see is the transition from Deshaun Watson to Jacoby Brissett. Jacoby Brissett got most of the first team reps in terms of 7-on-7 in the walkthroughs and all of those things. How important is it now to kind of transition into Jacoby Brissett? And John, what is this offense going to look like under Jacoby Brissett? Will it be the same offense, or will it be a little bit different given his skill set?
So you can't do as many things as you want with Jacoby Brissett that you can obviously with Deshaun Watson, but I think you're going to see like the offense that we've seen Kevin Stefanski run for the past 2 years in Cleveland. I don't think there's going to be too much different there. You're going to see the wide zone boot action type stuff with featuring the running back. So with Deshaun Watson, you can feature the pass a lot more. With Brissett, you need to protect him a bit more than say, obviously with Deshaun Watson. So I think it's going to look like that. And I think it's going to be an efficient offense that can still move the ball up and down the field. You got obviously an effective running game. And as long as, Jacoby Brissett has shown throughout his career that he can be an efficient quarterback, an effective quarterback. Are you going to say that he's going to take you to the Super Bowl? No, he's not that type of quarterback, but I think, crazier things have happened. We saw Nick Foles do it, and, you have these one-off years, but I think transitioning and getting him prepared to be a starter week one is obviously important because, obviously the suspension for Deshaun Watson was 6 games, and who knows where it's going to be heading to from at this point, because the NFL hasn't made a decision on the appeals thing. So you've got to get him ready to be the starter week one. And I think that the way they've handled it so far is actually pretty good. They're preparing that Deshaun Watson is our starter, but Jacoby Brissett is a professional. He understands the situation. He's preparing himself to be a starter as well. And I think he's got to get familiar with the ones, and he's doing that now, which is what you need to do.
And that's going to what's lead into, this week. Obviously, the story is the Browns are just going to take the joint practices, consider those games, and then, maybe pull some of the starters from actually playing against the Eagles on Sunday. John, with, the reports last week from Mary Kay Cobb about possibly Jimmy Garoppolo. Now, you had just said, with Jacoby Brissett, you think there's probably a limit as far as he can take this team. Do you think the Jimmy Garoppolo talks are maybe hinged to, if it is a calendar, if it is another football season for Deshaun Watson, is that something as the Browns, you say, man, we kind of think Jacoby and we kind of understand maybe he's got his limitations. Do you think that's maybe linked to, if there is no Deshaun for 17 games, then maybe we think that maybe knowing what we think of Brissett, that maybe Jimmy Garoppolo maybe becomes that option then?
Yeah, because I think we've seen, obviously in San Francisco, 2 seasons of him. One, he went to the Super Bowl, and another, he went to the NFC Championship game last year with a bum shoulder. He was hurt, So I think with him, you have a bit more upside, but there's not a high ceiling. He's a guy that's going to be probably loved in the locker room. All the reports that you hear from San Francisco, like his teammates absolutely love him. So the team will absolutely play and be ready to go week in, week out with Jimmy Garoppolo. You just have to expect that there's a cap to what he can pretty much do. Because he had one of the best schemes in the NFL in San Francisco, and obviously had talent there and a good offensive line. He's going to get that in Cleveland as well. He's not going to have George Kittle. He's not going to have Deebo Samuel and Brandon Ayuk and stuff, but he's still going to have Amari Cooper. David Njoku's no George Kittle. Nobody's going to even try to, fudge that around. But the talent in Cleveland is still really good. So he could, Brissett would be like a 500 type starter. I'd say Jimmy Garoppolo would be getting you into the double-digit type wins. He's not going to elevate your team like a Deshaun Watson could, because when Watson's on the field, and last we've seen of him, obviously he's a top 5 quarterback in the league. So I think Garoppolo can get you into that double-digit wins, and that helps to get you in a better situation in the playoffs. It's
certainly something to consider. And, with Watson and the possibility of it being a full season. And then the other thing is, it's Josh Dobbs, it's Josh Rosen. So what essentially, do you do in that scenario? So, for the Browns, it's a tough decision to have to make. And this is one that's, for Garrett and I, it's just frustrating. It's not about the length of what Deshaun Watson's suspension is at this point. It's about the fact the Browns need to know. You know what I'm saying? We're going into week preseason here. It's been 6 months. They need an answer. They need to, look, if this, it is what it is and this is the number, then, we need to be able to go out and handle our business, for what we need to do to, whatever it is as far as Deshaun. Maybe we have decisions we want to make, and it's kind of, muddying the waters there as far as them planning what they want to do. One last one. John, you never want to back away from a crazy take. 2022 on the horizon. Take for somebody good, take for somebody bad. NFL wise, what do you got for us?
Let's see here. I think Mac Jones is gonna be in contention for the MVP this year.
Oh my gosh, he loves Mac Jones.
He loves McCorkle. He loves McCorkle.
I love him. I love him. And you know what? There's so much bad noise that's going around New England this year. So much, because they're like, this offense looks awful, blah blah blah, and it's like comparing.
It did look great last year. It was successful, but it was nothing that you were not going to hang it in the Louvre by any means.
Mac Jones is an intelligent quarterback that's going to make good decisions, and he has much more athleticism than what he's given credit for. He ran like the 40 and the 4.6s. Like, everybody's talking about him like he's like chump change and running into fives or something like that, but he's definitely not. He's a much more athletic guy than he's given credit for. Defensive wise, what's a good defensive thing to I don't know. I think Myles Garrett's finally going to get over the hump and get that Defensive Player of the Year award.
20, can we get that 20 sack? Can we get to 20? Can we get the 20-piece nugget?
He should be able to get there. If as long as he stays healthy and his running mate over there and Jadeveon Clowney doesn't have any sort of injuries as well, he can. And with the defensive backs that the Browns have, he should have ample opportunity to get 20+ sacks. And to be honest, last year Myles Garrett was a better pass rusher than TJ Watt was. TJ Watt, yes, he had 20+ sacks in fewer games, but that scheme there allows him to get more of those sacks because he had Cam Haywood in the middle and to help to get the pressure to him. And quarterbacks fell into his lap. You saw Baker last year, like, basically just have three guys wide open and then, hey, TJ, come here and sack me.
Give me a hug.
And that happens a lot for him. And that's not to take anything away from what TJ Watt does, but like sacks are, TJ Watt plays 800 snaps in a year and he gets 20 sacks. That's, less than a percent of his plays or whatever. And what matters is the rest and how those sacks happen. And Watts is a fantastic player. He's a top 5 edge rusher, or if not even better than that in the NFL. It's just Myles last year was better. And to be honest, any year that Aaron Donald kind of steps on the field over the past 8 years, he should have won Defensive Player of the Year.
No question. This was a pleasure. We got through the PFF wrap here. Browns offense, defense from Friday night to victory over the Jaguars. Some thoughts here on Browns camp. So always thankful for John Kosko joining us here and being able to go through, these ball games a little bit, with a little bit more of a fine comb. Get some things here that maybe everybody didn't see in the original broadcast. So thanks for John for joining us. Garrett Bush, G Bush 91, the Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show, 11 to 1 Monday through Friday on YouTube. Garrett's respite is over. Get back to work, Garrett. 92.3 The Fan, the barbershop, Saturday mornings. And of course, you can always catch Garrett, other opportunities on 92.3 The Fan. So make sure, again, you're following at GBush91, myself at Jeff_LJ_Lloyd, show at Locked On Browns, follow back account. Appreciate all of you who make Locked On Browns your first listen every single day, whether it is in traditional podcast form, or of course, now on YouTube. 2,600 subscribers. Numbers just keep going up. We told you guys, look, it was going to be a nice ride, but once there was actually football to talk about, this thing was going to be, a freight train just absolutely loose on the tracks. And that's the way it's going to be. With all that being said, this has been your daily delivery of all things Dog Pound. LGB on the LOB. Let's go Browns.